This is the Jared Brennan Disorder Podcast, and this is the theme music. You might have caught the tail end of our Charlie barking at a delivery man there. That's what he does, and the postman is due in a wee while, so we'll probably be interrupted again at some point, but sure, what are you going to do? I can't wait any longer for perfect conditions. As I had worried a couple of weeks ago, the summer has indeed interfered with my podcasting schedule. I've not really done any in the last couple of weeks. In fairness, I've also been to Yorkshire to attend the Harrogate Old Peculier Crime Writing Festival as well, which added into my time quite a bit, and I have been back at a day job, working a couple of days a week in an office, and consequently I've had less time at home in which to find one of those spaces. And on the days that I am at home, the kids are here. Or that one time that I did have a little hour or two, I ended up playing the PlayStation instead, because even serious writers have to burn a bit of time every once in a while. And playing the PlayStation's a weird sort of pastime, because it's not exactly the same as watching a movie or reading a book or whatever. And I've done a lot of reading actually as well in the last wee while, but we'll get back to that. I have some thoughts on some really great books that I've read over the last few weeks. Having time on an airplane and in a hotel on my own has given me lots of time to read, so that was good. But back to the whole idea of how PlayStation or a game, Xbox or whatever you are into, isn't exactly the same as consuming entertainment like reading or going to a play or watching a movie or something like that. It seems like your brain is kind of switched off a little bit as you're figuring out these things, and you're not really using your imagination as much, I suppose, or feeling that whole artistic twinge, even though some of the writing in these computer games is amazing. You know, there's some really good stories. Like, I completed a game called Titanfall 2, which had giant robots and time travel and all sorts of crazy stuff going on. But it doesn't scratch that same itch. It doesn't give you that same creative bug, I don't think. Apart from one game I played years ago called Alan Wake, which made me want to write a horror novel that I still haven't gotten around to doing. But that was a very story-focused kind of game anyway. There was a lot more story than there was action, I feel like, in that one. And there were a lot of references to writers like Stephen King and Raymond Chandler and all, which made me smile. So that might have been constantly reminding me that this could be used as potential inspiration. But I don't really get that with games like Just Cause, where the aim is really just to run around and blow up towns and things like that, because it's more of a mindless activity. You know, you're not really following a story in that game. You're sort of just shooting people, shooting cars, blowing up buildings and speakers and statues, and generally just causing destruction and havoc, which is fun and has its place, but it does kill that artistic urge a little bit. So I have to remember this week to take a little time away from the PlayStation controller and sit at my keyboard for a bit, because my novel has stalled a little bit. Even though there's no reason for it, I still have an urge to write this particular book. I just haven't given myself the time to do it, so I need to get back on that. Also, I need to get back to this podcast, which is one thing that I'm doing now, and I'm hoping that getting back to the podcast, talking about reading some of my work, and generally just doing something productive will help with that urge to write as well. Actually turn that urge into actual output, which would be nice. I've also recently applied for a new job as well, which is a non-writing related one. I've had a lot of time to think over the last few months about what I want to do, and although writing is my first love, I'm just not at a level where I can sit back comfortably and allow for it to pay the bills. I need to be further up the food chain before that's an actual possibility. So I figured I would get a job, and although I have a PhD in creative writing and could potentially become a lecturer at a university, those posts are quite thin on the ground here in Northern Ireland or even south of the border, and going across the water really isn't an option for me. I'm a family guy with 3 kids, and they're all in schools, and I don't want to move them over, and taking a trip over to Harrogate alone just for 2 nights, that makes me miss my kids more than anything else. So the idea of maybe flying over to England 4 days a week or something like that just doesn't appeal to me at all. So with that in mind, I've had to look at sort of alternative ideas, and I sort of settled on an idea of working with people to try and get more ideas, I suppose. So as it stands, like I work in an office 3 days a week, and I see the same people every day. I drive the same road, I do the same job, tap the same keyboard, and there's nothing really inspiring about it at all. The people I work with are perfectly nice, you know, but it's just, we're all doing something that seems pretty bland and unfun, and at the end of the day you don't really sit back and go, that was a good day's work. You sort of just look at the clock and go, thank frig that's over. So I'll have to do something else, something more rewarding. So watch the space. I might make an announcement that I have a new job soon. Maybe not. I might be stuck in this slow-paced rat race for a while yet, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, that's one of the longest introductions I've done in a while. And possibly it's been good that I've been off for a couple of weeks, because it's given me the urge to chatter like a madman. Hopefully I'm not speaking too fast for everybody. What I'm going to do is read a couple of stories from that collection, Possession, Obsession and a Diesel Compression Engine, because that's something I started and didn't finish, and I like to finish things. It's something about me. And there's 2 stories left in that. So since there hasn't been a podcast for a while, I'll maybe make this one a bit longer than usual. I'll read 2 stories from this, and then we'll talk a little bit about the books I've been reading, and about my trip to Harrogate, which was very eventful. A lot of fun to be had by all. But first, a reading. And this story is called An Irish Possession by Jared Brennan. Here, mate. Do you want to hear about the time I was possessed? No, I'm not messing about. I was possessed by the devil. I'm the only wee lad from Belfast that was ever exorcised. There's been a few wee girls, but I'm my first boy. It was mad. Come here for a minute and I'll fill you in. It started off with me puking my stomach up in the bathroom the day after my 17th birthday. Now, I'd spent the night before at the Fallon Social Club, drinking for Ireland, so I thought it was just damn well a hangover. You know when you have a mouth on you like a big lump of used toilet roll? That was me. But then I thought, here, this isn't right, because I'd only been drinking beer all night. I hadn't touched any shots. I looked in the mirror. Jesus Christ, my face was all green. I rubbed at it to see if my wee pest of a brother had been messing about with his highlighter pen again. But no, it was all me. I had this rotten green cracked skin, and I was burning up. So I ran downstairs and looked in the kitchen for my ma's pills. She's been on them Valium since my dad left us like 15 years ago, when I was only a whimper. She gets them on prescription, so she always has plenty lying about. The come down of them is wild. But I needed something to steady my nerves. I was about to go insane with the worry. Anyway, I just swallowed them when my ma walked into the kitchen. She looked at me for like 2 hours before she opened her bake. "What the fuck's that on your face, Jim?" she said, all concerned and all. "I don't know, ma," I said. "Put on a wee fry, will you? I'm dying." So my ma pulled out the frying pan and threw on some bacon and sausage, a wee bit of potato bread. Great stuff. The smell was making my stomach growl. Well, I thought it was the cooking, but it turned out to be something else. "Here you are, son," my ma said. "God bless you." And at that, my growling stomach started roaring. I vomited up this green stuff and it hit my ma square in her face. Well, I near wet myself when I saw what happened. My ma's an angel, but you don't want to get her annoyed. She went over to the cooker, lifted the frying pan and nearly took my head off my shoulders. Can't say I blame her. I wouldn't want some wee bastard vomiting up green stuff on me. Well, anyway, I woke up in bed and the mad priest from Clonard Chapel was standing over me. He sprinkled holy water on me, straight from a bottle shaped like Jesus' ma, and it burned like acid. "Exorcizo te omnis spiritus immundi in nomine Dei Patris omnipotentis," the priest said, blessing himself. "Et in nomine Jesu Christi Filii Jesus, Domine et Judicis Nostre, et in virtute Spiritus Sancte, ut setas." Now, I wasn't myself at all, because the next thing I knew, I had my teeth in his throat. He punched me and I let go. He got me before I broke the skin on his neck, thank God. The white imprints of my teeth faded quickly. "Ab hoc plasmate de O'Neill, quod Dominus noster ad templum sanctum sum vocar dignata se, un fiat templum de vivi in spiritus sanctus habitet in eo." I didn't know what was going on. I was always afraid of this priest. Father Silver. His name should be dead funny, because he wore an eye patch, but it wasn't funny at all. Like, he was just scary. You could mess about at Mass when the other priests were about, but when Father Silver was in town, you knew better. He knew everybody's name, and he wasn't afraid to embarrass you in the middle of a Mass. "Jim O'Neill," he'd say, "quit acting a wee bastard or I'll slap the head off ye." I know. He had a mouth on him like a sailor. Well, compared to other priests. I mean, I never heard him say the F word, but he always said bastard and shite and arse and all the not so bad curses. Plus, I saw him hit wee Fran McGuinness from Dunfull Street when he was caught smoking in the chapel car park. It wasn't even a wee tap just to embarrass him either. It was a right hook, and the wee fella fell on his backside. Well, anyway, the mad priest stood over me, and I was acting like a cheeky bastard, biting him and all. Aye, right, that wasn't me, I can tell you that for nothing. I knew there was something seriously wrong. "John Silver," I said, but it wasn't me. "You son of a whore, begone from here." "Sorry, Father," the real me said. My voice came out high-pitched and panicky. He really was a scary priest, you know. "Abrinuntintis Satane," Father Silver prayed and waved his bottle of water about again. "Do you renounce Satan, Jim? The power of Christ compels you." It was crazy, because I saw The Exorcist last year, so I knew exactly what was wrong when I heard that compels you line. I had the devil in me. I was nearly proud of myself. I mean, like, all the wee messers running about the lower falls, and the mad bastard from down below picked me as his earthly vehicle. Do you like that one? Earthly vehicle? Aye, I heard Father Silver say it to my ma. "Mrs. O'Neill, your son has become the earthly vehicle of evil." I could smell incense burning. I love that smell. It reminds me of Wacky Backy. "What can we do, Father?" my ma asked. She was starting to freak out. "We're doing all we can, Mrs. O'Neill," Father Silver said. "I've had experience in this field before. We just need to stay strong and be patient." "Experience in this field?" said me, but not the real me. "Don't you make me laugh, you horse son. All you have experience in is hiding your secret family in America and hiding your Latino male lover from them." "Lies and misdirection," the priest snapped. "They will not save you now." "Oh, did I hurt your feelings?" the not me said. "Poor little faggot, come here and let me kiss it better." "I swear to God, Father," I said in a panic, "I didn't mean that." And then my tongue started to wag all over the place. God, you should have seen the size of it. It was about a foot long and blue. The priest threw some holy water over his right hand and grabbed the tongue. He pulled at it like it was that sword, you know, the one that was stuck in a big stone. I thought it was going to be agony, but it was dead soothing actually. My other voice screamed though. I guess it wasn't as pleasant for him. The tongue got longer and longer, and then I did start to get sore, because my throat had stretched out and my jaws were opened far too wide, like when you're at the dentist, but worse. I felt like I was about to die, and my ma stood screaming in the corner like a mad woman, and the priest kept pulling this big fucking black and blue thing out of my mouth. Nuts or what? Then there was this big slurping sound, like when you're nearly finished a milkshake, only 20 times louder, and a big pop. The priest held this funny looking wee bastard by the tongue. He was only 3 foot something and his wee legs were kicking out, trying to hit Father Silver in the balls, but he couldn't reach. I realised my ma wasn't screaming anymore. Instead, she walked up to the priest with this whacked out hell yo-yo. I thought she looked a little tense. She cleared her throat, all polite and all. The stumpy thing's eyes clocked her. "You made me hit my son with a frying pan," she said. "How dare you come into my house and treat my son's body and my kitchen that way? Have you no shame? Throwing up all over the place and taking over my poor wee Jim and making him disrespect me and causing me to hit him because of it. I thought I'd killed my wee pet." The black and blue midget tried to say something to her, but it couldn't because Father Silver still had it by the tongue. She drew back her leg and swung a murderous kick at the wee thing's balls. The sound of the thump near made me puke. I actually felt sorry for it. It threw a fit in the priest's grip, and then Father Silver swung it around the room. He knocked it into the walls and into my wardrobe and every other surface he could find. The bastard left big black and blue stains all over everything it hit. My poster of Jordan was fucked, and all my favourite bongs got smashed to bits. I was glad to get the slimy wee thing out of me though. After he beat the balls off it, my ma got a few digs in. The priest shoved its rosary beads down its throat, and then the Battle of Holy Water. There was a crap explosion, like wet black cat bangers, and the things inside were all over me, my man, the priest, in my bedroom. It was green on the inside, by the way, and it smelled like runny shite. Well, I was amazed. Did you just knock a shite out of that devil? He wasn't much of a bad bastard. Jim, my ma said, annoyed because I cursed in front of a priest. No, Jim, Father Silver said, and he smiled at me for the first time since I made my communion 10 years ago. That was an imp, a servant of Satan. But I like to think that I'm giving one of them to good old hiding hurts the big man a wee bit. Smelly wee bastards, aren't they? I said, and my ma hit me for cursing in front of the priest again. Aye, Jim, they fucking are. And the priest said that, but my ma didn't fucking hit him. Well, anyway, mate, what do you think of that? Mad, wasn't it? So there you go. Now you can tell everyone that you've met Jim O'Neill. They might write a film about me someday, and you'll watch it and you'll think about that time you met me. Wouldn't that be a head fuck? Jesus, you don't say much, do you? What's your name again? Well, I'll put in a good word for you with the big man, Nigel. I'm blessed, you know. Just asked Father Silver down at Clonard Chapel. He asked me if I'd be interested in the priesthood. Said he got into it himself after his own exorcism. Small world, eh? I wasn't sure if I was cut out for it, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. So that's why I'm hitching the Maynooth. You know, the priest school? I must be meant for greater things. Surviving something like that. You've got a lovely car, though. Love these 3 Series motors. Here. Why are we stopping? We're nowhere near Maynooth. And that was An Irish Possession. I hope you liked it. That's a story with quite a lot of energy, I think. And in fact, in 2010, I hooked up with a guy called Conor Maguire, who is a director, among many other things. He's also an actor and a writer and lots of other stuff. But he directed a stage version of that story at the Black Box in Belfast for a lunchtime thing. It lasted about 10 or 15 minutes. I thought it went really well. We never really got back around to doing it again, but I played Jim and the other characters, and it was a lot of fun. It was good for my confidence as a reader of my own work. And I think ever since I did that, I've become a more entertaining reader at live events and things like that, which was always great. Years later, I would again work with Conor on a play called Your Turn, which recently saw the stage a few times. And hopefully I'll get the chance to work with him again, because he's a decent old spud and I like his style. So yeah, that was that story, and that's the story behind that story. It's just a bit of fun, really. There is actually a history of exorcisms being performed here in Northern Ireland and the rest of Ireland. It's not as popular as it used to be, but it's a fun idea. And funny enough, it usually does only happen to girls, so I thought it would be fun to twist that round and make it about a boy. Especially one who has a tendency to, drink and smoke weed and possibly steal cars, that kind of kid. But, it was fun. So, like I said, today is a double edition, a bumper edition if you must, and so I'm going to read the final story from that collection, Possession, Obsession and a Diesel Compression Engine, which by the way is available on Amazon for 99p if you wish to buy it, and Kindle version. But, I've read them all day for free now, so you might not even want it. But if you prefer to read books, or if you want to have a look at them again, go ahead and buy it. At some point, it sort of helps support this podcast if you are buying my books. It makes me more motivated to do more of them as well, because it feels like this is having an impact on people enough so that they're willing to spend 99p the odd time on one of my titles, or indeed to spend near a tenner on like a paperback version of Disorder, perhaps, from noalibispress.com. But I don't have any sponsorship or anything for the thing, obviously, because I don't have an awful lot of listeners yet. So the only way that this podcast is going to fund itself or make itself worthwhile is if it translates into book sales. The other thing I'm thinking about doing is setting up a Patreon account, which I've heard other podcasters do, or YouTubers or whatever, which is a place where you can go and throw us a few quid if you feel like I have enriched your life in any way at all. But until I do that, maybe buy a book, or just keep downloading the podcast and commenting on it and sharing it with your friends, and maybe build the readership or the listenership. of it up a little bit. Because at the end of the day, I'm never going to get rich off something like this, but it would be good just to spread the word a wee bit about my work. That's all I'm really looking for at the end of the day. So, without further babble, here is the 6th and final story from the collection: Possession, Obsession and a Diesel Compression Engine. The story is called Would You Be Interested? Is your mother home, little girl? The man at the door stood tall in a sharp suit. He wore a fedora, the brim pulled low at the front like a joyrider's baseball cap. Good humour beamed from his handsome face. He had to be a salesman. Paul took an instant dislike to him. "I'm not a chick," he said. "Oh, excuse me, sonny. I must have been thrown by all that hair and your delicate jawline. It was an innocent mistake. What do you want? Is your father home? You're not very good at this, are you?" The man at the door didn't answer. Paul rolled his eyes. "Look, this is my house and I live here alone. Don't call me sonny. I'm 30 years old. If you've something to sell, you can deal with me. Now hurry up and get your pitch off your chest so I can go back to my breakfast." "Oh, good. You're confident enough to show me that you're irritated. This should be fun. Do you realise you said that out loud and that it makes no sense? Ah, you're very quick-witted. Another excellent trait, Paul. How do you know my name? Oh, I see. Give me that, will you?" The salesman held the new Guitar World magazine in his hand. The front cover featured Jessie Steele's Flying V, talentless teeny bopper. She didn't deserve such a fine instrument. He'd been a subscriber to the magazine since he'd started work as a session musician 5 years ago. His name and address were printed on the white label stuck to the magazine's cellophane wrapper. "Here you go, sir. I found it on your doorstep. Now let's get down to business, shall we?" "Yes, let's, and hurry up about it." "Okay, let me clear up this first point of confusion. I am not here to sell. I'm here to take." Paul waited for the punchline, but gave up after a minute's silence. "This is stupid. A word of advice: if you want to sell something to a modern customer base, find a new approach. Consumers have been spoiled by choice and efficiency of delivery of goods and services. Your bizarre sales pitch will never hold anyone's attention." Quite pleased with his well-constructed outburst, Paul tried to swing his door shut. It bounced back open. "Did you just stick your foot in my door? What the hell's wrong with you? You've 10 seconds to get off my property before I phone the cops." "Okay, Paul, that's enough. Let me in and we'll get this thing cleared up." "Didn't you hear what I said?" Paul looked at his watch. "You have 5 seconds left." Little pig, let me... I'm not kidding. 3, 2, 1. The salesman chuckled. "So what now, Paul?" Paul hesitated. Right, I'm phoning the cops. If you must." Paul kept his phone in the sitting room, and his mobile was charging in the kitchen. He would have been able to step away from his door to fetch either. The salesman grinned, showing off his dazzling white teeth. "What's the matter, Paul? Not sure what to do?" "Go away. Let me in. For God's sake." Paul grabbed the edge of the door with both hands and shoved it as hard as he could. It bounced off the salesman's shoe and juddered on its hinges. Paul shoved it again. The door sprang back, thumped into the adjoining wall and knocked out a massive lump of plaster. Paul watched white powder from the huge fissures settle on his carpet with wide eyes. "What the... Are you going to pay for that? Oh, did I damage the wall? Let's have a look." The salesman took a step forward and stunned Paul almost stepped aside. "What? No, I told you to leave. Forget about the wall and just bloody leave, will you?" Paul pushed into the other man's chest. The salesman stood as solid as a tree. Paul tried again. Nothing. The salesman poked Paul in the chest with his index finger. "How do you like it?" Paul growled with frustration and anger. He aimed a straight right punch at the guy's wide mouth. He cried out as his fist got trapped between a set of perfect white teeth. "Let go of me, you freak!" The salesman opened an already impossibly widened mouth even further, and Paul pulled back his hand. His livelihood. He flexed his slender fingers and found they still worked. The pain faded instantly, but a perfect imprint of the salesman's front teeth tattooed his index finger and pinky. He considered throwing another punch, but the fight had gone out of him. "I am glad you got that out of your system, Paul. You would have kicked yourself later if you had and at least tried to hit me. "Who are you? What do you want?" "My name is Tim. I need your life." "You want to kill me? Why?" No, I need your life. But first I'm going to have a shot from that bottle of Jim Beam you have in your kitchen. Follow me, please. I'll explain over a nice drink. Can I pour you one?" "Of course I can." Paul followed Tim into the kitchen. Tim took the bottle of Jim Beam from the first cupboard he opened and 2 glasses from the second one. He pulled out 2 short chairs at the kitchen table and poured a couple of shots of bourbon. Paul watched all of this in amazement. The stranger moved about his kitchen like he had lived there for years, comfortable and confident. Tim gestured for Paul to sit down before he took his own seat. He took off his fedora and revealed a head full of thick brown hair, singed, wiry and black at the ends. He set the hat on the table next to the bourbon. His eyes shone violet as he turned to Paul. "I love this stuff. You have good taste, Paul. Quality without pretension. Drink up. You'll need something to take the edge off this." Paul lifted a shot glass and threw the bourbon down his throat. Tim filled the empty glass again. "What's going on?" Paul asked. Tim knocked back his shot of bourbon and topped up his glass immediately. "Well, I'm afraid that I have to move somebody into your life." "Come again?" "Oh, don't be dense, Paul. You're a clever guy. It's part of the reason the guy wants to be you. It's a Faust thing, you know?" "I really don't know. Please stop talking in riddles." "Okay, Paul. I'll put this temporary obtuseness down to shock. I guess you're going through quite an ordeal. Well, here's the thing. Someone you know has offered us their soul to have a life like yours. Well, actually, to be you. You should be flattered. The boss has sent me out to tie up a loose end before the deal is completed. That loose end is you. Now, there are a few ways we can handle this. Are you ready to consider your options?" "What's going on?" Tim sighed. Paul saw a flash of light and then he was looking up at Tim from the cool tiled floor. His left cheek burned. Tim lifted him by a handful of t-shirt and planted him back down in his chair without effort. "I'm not going through all of that again," Tim said. "Now take a moment and let this sink in. And have another shot while you're at it." Paul didn't normally drink straight bourbon before noon, but he was able to make an exception. Again, Tim filled the glass as soon as it was set down on the table. Paul's head spun. Tim emptied his own glass and loaded it up again. Paul considered a third shot, but decided to slow down. "Okay, to avoid an orange slab, I'm going to go with the flow here," Paul said. "What are these options you're talking about?" "Now you're getting it. You have 3 options. Listen to all 3 before you make a decision. Make a careful choice, but please do not procrastinate for too long. I have a few more appointments today." Paul nodded and waited for Tim to continue. "Option 1. You may sell your soul and upgrade your current life to the status of rock god or Hollywood icon and enjoy a life of decadence. Option 2. You can take the moral high ground, refuse to sell your soul, and pray to the other guy that you have lived a good enough life to fill his criteria for eternal bliss among the harp players and choir singers. And then there's option 3, the one that I would heartily recommend." "And what's that?" Paul asked. "Accept gainful employment with us," Tim smiled. "You get to become immortal, travel the world, and our dental plan is fantastic." Paul flinched as Tim clacked his teeth together. The sharp sound echoed off the tiled walls. Tim pushed a hand through his singed hair. "But don't piss the boss off." Paul sank his third shot as Tim's creepy laughter filled the air, then swiped the bottle from the table and refilled his empty glass. "Good idea," Tim said as he retrieved the bottle, drained his own glass and filled it back up. "You have 10 minutes to make your decision." "This doesn't seem very fair, Tim." "You have 3 perfectly good options to choose from. What could be fairer?" "But I like my life. I want things to stay as they are." "Oh, come now. Everyone's life can be improved. Don't be so arrogant." "Then why would someone want to be me?" "Oh, they're a bit crazy and they don't have much ambition. They see you as their better. They haven't figured out that without a soul they have no hope of trading up, and they'll be stuck in Mediocreville with nothing to look forward to but inevitable eternity in hell." "Well, that's option 1 out the window. Who want to be a rock god and know they're damned?" "That's the kind of intelligence I expect from you. Good man." So who's the genius that wants my life? Your little brother, I'm afraid. Crap. I agree. Tim frowned in empathy. Such a nasty business, eh? Paul thought about his younger brother. He could see how his life would seem perfect to Frank. Frank, the divorced, unemployed alcoholic. The family had tried to help him, but he'd gotten too messed up and ashamed of himself to accept it. He'd stopped taking their calls and wouldn't answer his door when they went to his housing executive flat. It had been a year since Paul or his parents had even spoken to him, but Frank was his brother. If I pick option 2, I've practically sealed Frank's fate. How would I ever get accepted into heaven after that? That's very forward thinking of you, Paul. I guess all that's left is my recommendation. Would you be interested? No. I really thought you had grasped the situation here, Paul. You have 3 options. Pick one. Again, I recommend option 3. Like I said, this isn't fair. I propose a 4th option. I'm intrigued. Please, do go on. Run. Paul jumped up and bolted for the back door. His face hit the tiled floor and his nose gushed blood. Tim's hand gripped his ankle like an iron shackle. What on earth made you think you could run away from me? It was worth a try. I like you, Paul. You're a fighter. Unfortunately, you can't beat us, so I reckon you should join us. Tim released Paul's ankle and Paul got to his feet. He went over to the sink and washed his face. His nose bled, so he lifted a tea towel and pressed it against his nostrils to stem the flow. He thought about his predicament. I guess I'll do it then, Paul said. Where do I sign? Good man. Tim pulled a piece of paper from the inside pocket of his suit jacket. Just sign this, please, right there at the bottom. Paul signed the contract. It was full of very fine print. As his pen left the dotted line, he felt a surge of power. His nose no longer hurt. So I guess you just have to go get my brother and we're done here? Paul asked. You guessed right, my friend. It's been great doing business with you. Paul threw a straight punch at Tim's mouth. This one wasn't caught. Tim went down and Paul stood over him. He put a foot on his chest. Well, I'm afraid I can't let you leave, my friend. At least not until Frank lives out the rest of his life. The time should pass quite quickly for a couple of immortal guys. But you can't beat me, Paul. Well, Tim, I'm your equal now, so I guess we got a bit of a stalemate going on here. Now, get up and fight. It'll pass the time. Tim sighed. I hate it when you guys find a loophole. I had dinner plans. Paul laughed. Tim stood. And the fight was on. Shanae. That means that's it. That was the last story from Possession, Obsession and a Diesel Compression Engine. And I hope you enjoyed it. So there you go. We're a little over half an hour into the podcast, and here and now, where I am recording this, it is nearly midday, which means it's nearly postman time, which means the dog is due another barking fit at any moment now, which may interrupt the proceedings, but we'll deal with that when we come to it. In the meantime, why don't I tell you a wee bit about what went on at Harrogate? It was a funny sort of trip. Mostly because I'd been to the gym the Tuesday before and managed to wreck the big toe on my left foot. At the time I thought it was actually fractured or something because I could barely walk on it at all. So I had to employ the use of my father-in-law's walking cane, which meant that I was hobbling to Harrogate through the airport and to the bus station and whatnot, which was an experience. I felt quite foolish. I saw a few pitying glances and a few confused ones. Probably because although I have white hair and quite a lot of white in my beard, I am still quite youthful. I only just turned 39 and I look kind of young for it. I'm in decent shape and I dress kind of young, and I have sleeve tattoos, and I don't look like somebody who should have a walking stick, but I had one, as well as a big grey suitcase piling behind me, which was carrying copies of Disorder, my latest novel, which you can buy from noalibiespress.com. And it made things quite awkward, you know. I made my way to the hotel and all, and I took an hour and I was reading. At the time I was finishing off Mark Edwards' The Retreat, which I'll talk about later on. So I was quite happy to be sitting in this nice hotel room, and it was a nice hotel room. It's the first time I've had a room where I had 2 bathrooms, a living room and a bedroom, and the bedroom itself was bigger than my own bedroom at home, bigger than my sitting room even, which is the biggest room in the house. And So it was no great chore to lie on the bed and wait for painkillers to kick in, along with a couple of tins that I'd bought from the local Tesco Express, while I geared up to the event I had planned with, at the incident room at the Swan Hotel. But the time came around where I had to make my way there pretty quickly. So I hobbled along, which was fun. And it was one of them foldy uppy canes, and I had a backpack with me, so my plan was to fold it up before anybody actually saw me using it. So I wasn't getting all that sympathy stuff going on, or I wasn't having to explain that it hurt my toe, probably by kicking someone's elbow or something at training. And but before I got to the actual hotel, I came across the wonderful writer Claire Allan, who noticed the walking stick right away, obviously. So I started the spiel that I would have to repeat again and again, about hurting myself at the gym and possibly broke my toe, don't know what's going on, it hurts a lot, it's getting in the way, yada yada yada. But anyway, it was lovely to see Claire, and I'd never bumped into her again the whole event, which was a shame because I was hoping to chat to her, but what can you do? I've recently purchased the last of her Paula Maguire books, which I'm looking forward to reading. You'll see it on my Instagram account, the last haul actually, just the other day, Tuesday it was. And so I never got talking to her again, but these things happen at events like this. The place is massive, there are so many writers there, and I did get talking to a lot of other people. When I got closer to the actual hotel itself, I immediately saw Jay Stringer, which was awesome, and I got to give him a quick cuddle. And then James Oswald was beside him, as was the American writer Johnny Shaw, who was always very active in the BoucherCon crime fiction. I had met him before in Long Beach, and he remembered me, which was really nice. So I got chatting to him quite briefly, but time was pressing on and I had to get to the incident room to take part in Steve's event. On the way I passed Susie Holliday and a couple of other writers, and I was like, oh hi, hey, oh hi, oh hiya, talk to you later. And that was class. It was fun, it felt like coming home, you know. I've only ever been to Harrogate one other time, but it just feels like you belong there, you know. It was like, these are my people. This is the kind of place I want to be. Not forever, but my liver couldn't handle that. But definitely for a while, you know. So it was on to Steve's event. I asked at reception where I would find the incident room, and they pointed to the sign that was directly behind me, which pointed to the incident room. So I followed that upstairs at a slightly slower pace than usual, and waited to be offered the first of my free beers for taking part in the event, which is grand. I got a bottle of Budweiser, which wouldn't be my favourite, but when it's free it tastes a hell of a lot better. And I sat back and listened to the first clatter of writers who were up for it. The event was loosely based on the idea of a jury, so it had 12 authors talking about time that they had spent on a jury, while Steve, who is a solicitor as well as a writer, talked about his book 13 and talked about his own experiences with juries and what he thought of them. It was a very interesting event, and when it came round to my turn I got to sit with Craig Robertson and Angela Clark. I'd met Craig before, but this was the first time I'd met Angela, so that was a lot of fun. And there was sort of a common thread through our books and everything. There was a little bit of social media being used in our most recent... Well, Angela's books are like the social media trilogy, I think. A lot of them, one's based on Facebook, you know, a Facebook live video, and they sound really fascinating. So I'll definitely be promoting those when I have read them. And also Craig Robertson's book I had recently just finished, Murderabilia. I have the photographer on my Kindle, which was what he was actually talking about, so I'll be reading that one quite soon as well. But the event went well. I did have a little bit of experience on a jury once, a few years ago, but I never actually got to serve in any of the cases, but I did manage to relate an amusing story. And by the end of the event I also signed a bunch of copies of Disorder, so hopefully I find myself a couple of new readers in Yorkshire, with any luck. And that was that. Afterwards, we were meant to get free pizza, but I went back downstairs and ended up talking to a couple of writers. I met a writer called Ali Knight, who was a good laugh to chat to. And we had a burger and drank a few more drinks, and things sort of just got a bit quieter then. My foot started playing up more and I wasn't feeling as sociable. So after a quick chat with Angela McMahon and meeting a guy called Tony Kent, who is a new writer who has set some of his work in Ireland, so that was of great interest to me. I had to call it a night, and I hobbled back to the hotel early, really early for Harrogate. The first time I was there, I actually closed the bar both nights, but I just couldn't do it because I was too sore. But it might have been a mercy, you know. The next day I got up and had a little bit more energy, and I would need it, little did I know. I waited and I read. I finished Mark's book, The Retreat, which was class, and then I started reading Martyn Waits' new book, The Old Religion, which was quite captivating, and it made me late, basically. I had my breakfast. I only intended to read for about 20 minutes, but 2 hours later I was like, oh, because Steve Kavanagh had phoned me and asked me what had happened. He thought I'd disappeared, so I realised I needed to get back to the Swan Hotel. So I hobbled back 10 minutes, and I bumped into Stav Shiraz on the way, who had recently won the Theakston's prize and was in great humour. So it was lovely to be able to congratulate him on that and to get a quick catch-up chat with him. He's a lovely guy, very smart and, you know, humorous, but very modest with it as well. At which point we then bumped into Don Winslow, which was insane. I sort of stood at the side and, you know, hemmed and hawed while Stav entertained him with jokes, and they chatted like old friends. And I was just like, this is mad. So I never actually said much to the guy, other than to refuse his offer of a very nice caramel wafer type snack thing that a reporter had given him. And yeah, so that's a weird claim I can make. Don Winslow offered me a snack and I said no. And after that I bumped into Johnny Shaw again, which was great. So I sort of said, right, I'm going to see Steve Kavanagh and Stuart Neville, who I could see sitting in a nice little table by the beer tent. And Johnny says, hi, I know those guys, I'll come with you. But he said it in an American accent, but I'm not going to insult him by trying to do one. So we went, and is this story even all that interesting? It is to me, but I don't know. This is, I suppose we'll call this an insight into the life of a writer at a fiction festival, a crime fiction festival. There's not a big massive twist at the end of it or anything, but I'm just sort of autobiographing my experience as a lower rung writer and a reader, as I spend time with a bunch of writers. So let's just pretend it's interesting. I'll keep going with it anyway. If you thought it was a whole big barrel of shite, you can let me know on Twitter, and I'll think about that for future episodes. So I clattered along. This time I didn't bother to fold up my walking stick because my foot was even worse than it was the day before. I just went along with the walking stick, and upon greeting Stuart Neville, he raised his own walking stick. And I was like, friggin' hell, I like the walking wounded. Fantastic. Barely a good limb between us. But that was grand because we spent most of the rest of the day sitting down. I got myself into a seat. I was sitting beside Johnny Shaw, and we just sat and we drank lots of pale ale from the Theakston's own brewery. At various times, different writers came along and chatted to us. It was lovely to meet in person for the first time a guy called Barry Graham, who is a Buddhist monk as well as a crime fiction writer. So I chatted to him for ages before he and his acolyte wandered off in search of a steak challenge. Meanwhile, Johnny Shaw was with us, which was good because Barry spent a lot of time in America, so he knew Johnny quite well. That's what attracted him to the table to begin with. And then I realised that both Barry and I had read each other's books. I had read his Kill Yourself, which was a Buddhist self-help book, I suppose. The title being a little bit of a cheeky tongue-in-cheek idea. It doesn't mean kill yourself, it means kill yourself, as in your ego. And that was fun anyway. And I got to talk a bit about my own interest in Buddhism and things like that. And it turns out he's building a Buddhist centre in Glasgow, which is going to be something fun and something I'll definitely visit in the future. Other people who happened along were Pete Rozovsky from Philadelphia, which was another American dude. He took some cracking photos of us, some of which you can see on Facebook or Instagram. And at one point Mark Billingham, Eva Dolan, and a few other literary greats, like Christopher Brookmeyer even came along with his wife, who he's now co-written a book with. And all the while it was me and Stuart and Steve and Johnny Shaw were the common denominator at the table. We were the ones who didn't move the whole time. We just drank and let people come to us. And it was such a beautiful day. It was just one of those days where I just went, you know what, I've not really got anything to do except for pass some time, and I'm feeling quite good. And although I keep drinking beer, I don't seem to be getting too drunk or sloppy, and this is really nice, really, really nice. And so it went until the light began to fade on the day. At which point Steve and Stuart managed to blag us a table at the crime fiction quiz, which was nuts. This is a quiz that's hosted by Mark Billingham and Val McDermott every year, and which every question is a crime fiction related question, which was crazy because we had 6 crime fiction authors all answering these things. Our team consisted of me and Steve Kavanagh and Stuart Neville, Johnny Shaw, Eva Dolan and Craig Robertson. And to give you an idea of the kind of calibre of writer I was sitting with, 2 of the writers at the table were actually the answer to 2 of the questions given at the quiz, which was great. So it meant we did get a few points. In fact, we did very well in the quiz. We came 3rd, even though our team was named the Twisted Cants, because, you know, you can't really win a quiz when you're... the Pissed Cants, not Twisted. So we were so pissed that we can't win a quiz. That's what I heard anyway whenever Stuart suggested the name. So yeah, it was quite an experience doing the quiz and everything. So afterwards there was time just for a few more drinks, but although it was later than it was the first night, I thought I had done enough, I drank enough. I pretty much drank my own body weight in pale ale and had a couple of whiskies at this stage, and I thought I might get home here while I can still move. I wasn't feeling entirely confident about my mobility with the walking stick and then with the extra alcohol as an added challenge, so I thought I should definitely get back. And really that was my Harrogate adventure, because the next day I got up and all I did was chill around the hotel until it was time to go get my plane and do some more reading. But yeah, it was fun, it was an experience. It's definitely something I want to do again, but I'm very glad that it's only once a year, and it may be 2 years or so before I go again, but my goodness, it was a lot of fun. A hell of a lot of fun. And I met so many cool writers, some who I've forgotten to mention here, and for that I apologise. But those who I have mentioned, you sort of give you an idea of the kind of people I was hanging about with. I can't get over how nice these people are, how much fun they are, and how like-minded we all are. You know, it was just one of those days that I really needed. Good for my mental health, I should say. Even though alcohol's a depressant or whatever, we just laughed so much that day, talked so much about writing, you know, about the books we read, and just generally about life, and it was beautiful. And I urge you, if you have friends in your own industry or whatever interest that you like, you know, I have a friend who goes to a Transformers conference every few years, which sounds a bit weird, but yeah, it's all people who like to watch the Transformers cartoon or the movies or draw Transformers or, you know, read the comic books or whatever, or in fact build the actual toys themselves. That sounds kind of cool. It's just people with a shared interest all getting along, and they all get up to all sorts of devilment, and they get drunk, and, you know, they stay in touch with each other throughout the year, and then they all meet up again a year later. And there are going to be things that you're interested in, you know. Could be a sport or a hobby or whatever. Just embrace it. Go do it. Have fun with it. Because it really is a tonic, you know. So I came back thinking I would be all refreshed and roaring to go, but it hasn't really kicked in yet, mostly because of that foot injury and because I've had to go back to work. Also, we had a leave-in do for my brother who is moving to Austin. Bye-bye, Mark. We went to a bar in Belfast called Filthy McNasty's and took it over and had a merry old time. And then the next day we went to the Morn Seafood bar with the kids, because you can't really take the kids to a bar in Belfast. It's just not appropriate whatsoever, especially when upon first arrival we got to witness the first guy being winged out, which was great crack. Some dude knocked over a stool and didn't pick it up, so the bouncer got pissed off with him and chucked him out right away, which was grand. He wasn't one of our numbers, so we didn't feel too bad about it, but we knew to sort of watch our P's and Q's from that point on. No knocking over stools or anything like that. But then we went to the Morn Seafood bar in Dundrum with the kids and my parents and my brother and sister and my sister-in-law, and ate a lot of fish and mussels and whatnot, and then we said goodbye. It was kind of a emotional thing, you know. Mark slipped off and paid the bill and all, which was kind of a trick my dad used to pull every once in a while, which I've done once or twice. It was really fun to see Mark do it as a little goodbye gesture. I mightn't have eaten as much or drank as much if I had have known he was going to do that, but c'est la vie, you know. Thank you very much for filling our tummies, Mark, and I really do hope that you do well in Austin, Texas, and that I have a reason to go there sometime in the future. I believe there's a BoucherCon happening in Houston at some point, which would be close enough to visit my brother in the same trip, so I might be doing that. And yeah, it's a sad wee chapter, but at the same time I'm delighted for him. He's going to go and live that dream he's always dreamt. He works with in movies now, but I think he wants to work for a YouTube channel called Rooster Teeth, or a YouTube network even. They've got a lot of channels working out under them, which are based in Austin, Texas. So that'll be something for him. He's been watching these guys since he was a teenager, doing all sorts of things like Red versus Blue, the old Halo YouTube videos. And it's just been a lifetime ambition of his to do something like that. And since he settled one ambition by working in movies and getting his name in the credits of a bunch of Hollywood blockbusters, I'd say his chances of landing this job are pretty high as well. He's already been talking to a few of them and knows that he has a bit of an in with them. So, fair play to you, Mark. Best of luck. May the wind always be at your back, and may God hold you in the palm of your hand and whatnot. Palm of his hand. So, other than that, what could we talk about? There is the fact that I've read a bunch of books when I wasn't playing the PlayStation and burning my time. So maybe give them all a quick mention. Before I went to Harrogate, I finished reading Skin Deep by Liz Nugent, which was a fantastic insight into a sociopath. Quite a cool setting, an interesting character in Cordelia, and an insight into how you can be so numb and so self-centered and narcissistic that you don't even realise how much damage you're doing to other people. Liz is a great turn of phrase and a great way of getting right into a character's psyche, as I've found in Lying in Wait when I read it a couple of years ago, and this was no disappointment either. Really, really interesting book, something I really enjoyed. And quite relatable to it actually was the book by Claire Allan, named Her Name Was Rose, which was set in Derry. I kind of did a tour of the UK with my books recently. So we've covered south of Ireland, and indeed a part of the Riviera with Liz's book, and then Claire Allan's book was set in Derry, and it was very interesting. A lady witnesses another woman called Rose get run over by a car, and gets unhealthily interested in her life, finds out more about her on Facebook and things like that, and figures out where she used to work and all, and the first thing she does is take over the girl's job that she has left vacant. And then she gets to meet her friends and her widowed husband, and gets more and more deeply involved in this woman's former life. It's fascinating. It's a creepy thing to do, but at the same time you find yourself pulling for the lead character. And a very interesting read. Kind of a slow burn in places, but at the same time very, very, very cleverly put together. And Claire has a fantastic style of writing, a very defined voice that she's made, that she's honed in previous novels. This is her debut crime novel, but she has written a number of best-selling women's fiction novels as well. So definitely one to watch. I'll be looking forward to her next book, and well done, Claire. Welcome to the crime fiction fold. It's always good to have another Northern Irish lady come along, because there just aren't enough of these just yet. But thankfully the ones that are here are of such high quality that they're showing us what we should be doing. The next stop on my UK tour then was to finish off Craig Robertson's Murderabilia, which was a crazy book. Really, really good. You couldn't say it was a slow burn really. It was quite fast paced. There was a lot going on. Even one of the characters was bedridden for most of the story. He still managed to make it a high stakes, very tense and action packed kind of book. But it was more about the morality behind this idea of what murderabilia is, which is the collection of, items, souvenirs from people who have committed murder. So you've got the letters of Charles Manson, or the music of Charles Manson, or you've got the clothes of a victim, that they were wearing when they were murdered, or letters from Ted Bundy to one of his many female admirers. Lots of stuff going on. And then it gets so deep and so dark, and it explores the dark web and other things like that, because a lot of these items can't be sold on the normal internet because it's illegal, or morally ambiguous at the very least. And it was crazy. It was really mad. But so that was an awesome book, and that marked Scotland off on my tour of the UK, reading tour of the UK. Next came Mark Edwards' The Retreat, which was set in Wales, although Mark's not actually Welsh, he's English. This book was set in Wales, and it featured a writer's retreat, which seems on the surface to be a haunted house as well, which is really interesting. So you've got a bunch of writers who are going to be prone to being victims of their own imagination anyway. And then you have a house that's very convincingly haunted, and a character who really wants to get to the bottom of it, mostly because he's interested in the lady who owns the house, and he wants to find himself a place in her life. But whatever entity has been making weird stuff happen at the house has made it very clear that he and all of the writers are unwelcome there, and that they should leave. And then bad shit starts to happen to them. It's a really cool novel, similar to some of his previous reads. I've read Magpies as well, and Mark Edwards likes to have like a supernatural hint in all of his books, and then they may or may not turn out to be explainable. I'm not going to tell you either way what this one was, but it's definitely very interesting, something you should check out. It's one of those books as well. It's a very fast read, something you can get through. It's Mark's ability to write succinctly and to be very clear and unconfusing in his prose that helps that, as well as the short chapters. So even reading it as an interesting exercise into how you could do that would be a good idea. And my final stop in the UK tour of reading was Martyn Waite's Old Religion, and that was crazy. A really good book. A new character he has introduced called oh crap, I've forgotten the name. Something Kilgannon. Damn it. Tom Kilgannon. Yes, he's his new character. He's a mysterious kind of guy. He seems to be very new to a small town in Cornwall, in which strange things are starting to happen. Again, this is one of those spooky wooky kind of things. There's a sort of an exploration of the ideas of paganism and blood sacrifice and things like that, and how old rituals can bring both fortune and misfortune to the land of Cornwall. But also at the centre of it is a commentary on what Brexit is doing to England at the minute, especially to the farming community, which is something that was never considered whenever that craziness was voted in a few years ago. Martyn Waite was on the same panel I was on last week at Harrogate, and he described it as a cross between Brexit and The Wicker Man, which I feel is a pretty fair assessment of the novel. I couldn't come up with a better one myself actually, so we'll just go with that. But Tom Kilgannon was a very interesting character, and I know this is the start of a series of books featuring this guy, so I'm definitely going to read more of those. And I am definitely very impressed with Martyn Waite. It's the first time he's written under his own name for about 10 years now. I'm glad to see he's back in the game, and that he's come back with such a strong statement in the book The Old Religion. So yeah, I have been pretty productive in the old reading front, as well as blowing up villages on a computer game. I've also applied for a new job and been to my old job and done a tiny bit of writing and a hell of a lot of thinking. Currently I'm reading something a bit less grounded in reality. I'm reading Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman, which is going to be very interesting, I would imagine. Oh, and two other books that I read I forgot to mention. I talked about meeting Dogo Barry Graham at Harrogate, and at the time he gave me a copy of his new book, The Wrong Thing, which features a character called The Kid, and it is fantastic. I read it in like one day, and it's just a fantastic and interesting exploration into this Mexican drug dealer's life. It's somewhere between urban legend and autobiography, and it's such a fast read. It's such a chilling read. It just shows you how badly someone's life can go without them even actually really intending for it to go that way, and how you can be a victim of your environment and whatnot. Very strange read, very eye-opening read, you know. Gives you a real good insight into what America is like for the lower classes, and definitely makes you think. And the other thing I read was Barry had sent me a book about Buddhism. Sorry, that interference there is me opening my Kindle Touch. Sorry about that. And this book is called Nothing Extra. Nothing Extra. So I think you can get that on Kindle. It's a very short read. It gives you some Buddhist principles that you can apply to your life, and it is fascinating Barry doesn't like spoon feed you with these things. It forces you to think, but that's a good thing, you know. And it talks about how you should kind of almost accept the situation you're in at the minute, you know, not always be wishing for things to be better or wondering how they can get any worse, you know. It's just a way to be, you know, which is explained much better in the book. So if you are into the idea of Buddhism and self-help and things like that, that's an interesting one to check out. I also really like Kill Yourself, which was an earlier version of this. Well, not a version, just an earlier text based on Barry's Buddhist principles and learnings. And I found it helpful at the time that I read it as well. I think what I'm going to do at some point in the future is actually read a few passages from Barry's Nothing Extra and talk about them, what they meant to me, and how I feel like I could apply them to my life. I'll not do it today because we're over an hour now into this podcast, and my wife has just come home and I need to get some other stuff done today. So, in the meantime, I shall be reading Neil Gaiman's Norse Mythology, and then I'm going to follow that up with The Upper Hand by Johnny Shaw. And after that, we'll see. There's a Michael J. Malone book on my Kindle I keep meaning to read, so I'll maybe get round to that one. And hopefully I'll get some more writing done as well. And so, this is the end of this most rambling and probably overly long podcast. And all I want to do is wish you well. Tell you they're all lovely people. Love yous lots like jelly tots and whiskey shots. Keep her lit. And I'll be chatting to you again soon.